Hey there, welcome to the kitchen. Listen up. Have you ever been staring at a beautiful piece of chuck, knowing it's packed with flavor, but then you remember how tough it can be? Well, you're in the right place. Today, we're tackling that challenge head on. We're taking that cheap, tough chuck steak and turning it into something so juicy, so tender, it'll make a ribeye jealous. And the best part? We're doing it all with just 3 simple techniques. That's right, whether it's beef, pork, chicken, you name it, this recipe will change the way you cook tough cuts forever. We're talking jacquarding, and yes, we're bringing in the fancy tools. Then we're hitting it with a dry brine, the secret weapon for flavor and juiciness. And finally, we're finishing it off with a reverse sear that'll give you a crust so perfect, you'll be plating it up in a Michelin-starred restaurant. You ready to get your hands dirty? Let's get started. Alright, first up, let's talk about jacquarding. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jacquarding? Sounds like something you do with curtains, not steak. But trust me, it's a game changer in the kitchen. This step is all about breaking down those tough fibers in the meat, turning that chuck steak from a chewy nightmare into a tender dream. It's the secret to making even the toughest cuts of meat melt in your mouth. Now, a jacquard tenderizer, it's a tool, not a magic wand, though it might as well be. It's got these little needles that puncture the meat. These needles are designed to create tiny channels in the meat. Don't worry, it's not as brutal as it sounds. These tiny punctures, they're going to help the meat absorb moisture like a sponge, soften up, and cook more evenly. This means your steak will be juicy and flavorful. No more dry, tough steak. You'll be serving up restaurant-quality meals right at home. So, here's how we do it. Grab your chuck steak, lay it flat on your cutting board. Make sure it's clean, you don't want last week's dinner making a guest appearance, and take your jacquard tenderizer. This is where the magic begins. Now press it into the surface of the steak, making sure you cover every single inch. Be thorough but gentle. Don't go hammering it like you're building a house. Be gentle. Let the tool do its job. The key is to let the needles do the work for you. You'll see these little puncture marks all over. That's what we want. These marks are the pathways to a tender, flavorful steak. And remember, this isn't just about texture, it's about tenderness. Those punctures are like little doorways for flavor to get in there. Seasoning and marinades will penetrate deeper, making every bite delicious. Now I know some of you are panicking. Gordon, I haven't got a jacquard tenderizer. Don't worry, there's a simple solution. Don't you dare reach for that takeaway menu. We're not giving up that easily. If you don't have a jacquard tenderizer, a simple fork will do the trick. Just make sure it's clean and sturdy. Just stab it all over, but for God's sake, be careful not to go too deep. We want to tenderize, not mutilate. We're not trying to turn it into a pincushion. The goal is to create enough punctures to break down the fibers and allow flavors to seep in. Once you've tenderized that meat, we're moving on to the next step. Get ready to transform that steak into a culinary masterpiece. Now, we're moving on to the dry brine, a technique that will elevate your steak to new heights. This, my friends, is where we take that chuck steak from good to brilliant. It's all about enhancing the natural flavors. Dry brining might sound fancy, but it's dead simple. Even a donkey could do it. No special skills required. Basically, we're going to season the meat with salt and let it sit. That's it. No complicated steps. This isn't just about making it salty though. It's about creating a depth of flavor. This is about amplifying the flavor and making sure that steak holds on to every drop of juicy goodness. The salt works wonders. So, here's the game plan. Grab your kosher salt, none of that table salt rubbish, and sprinkle it generously on both sides of the steak. Be thorough, don't be shy. We're not looking for a light dusting here. We want a good, even coating. Use about 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of salt per side depending on the size of your steak. Adjust as needed. Now here's the hard part, you have to leave it alone. Patience is key here. That's right, put down the pepper grinder, step away from the steak, let it rest. Let that salted beauty sit uncovered on a rack for at least 1 to 2 hours. This is crucial, alright? Don't rush it. This gives the salt time to work its magic. It's a transformative process. It draws out the moisture from the steak, and then that moisture mixes with the salt and gets reabsorbed back into the meat. A beautiful cycle. The result? A steak that's more flavorful and juicier than you ever thought possible. It's a game changer. And don't forget about the air circulation, that's important too. It helps in the drying process. It helps dry out the surface of the steak, which means we're going to get a perfect sear later on. That crust is what dreams are made of. Now, I know time is precious, but if you want to take it to another level, leave that steak in the fridge overnight for an even deeper brine. The longer, the better. Trust me, It's worth the wait. Your patience will be rewarded, but even just 1 to 2 hours will make a world of difference. You'll taste the improvement. Alright you lot, are you ready for the final step? This is where all our hard work pays off. This is it, the moment of truth, the grand finale of our culinary journey. We're about to reverse sear this bad boy and turn it into a masterpiece. Trust me, this technique is a game changer. Reverse searing, it's not some newfangled cooking technique, it's just simple science. It's about precision and patience. We're going to cook the steak slowly at a low temperature first, allowing the meat to cook evenly. And then we're going to finish it off with a high heat sear that'll make your mouth water. This two-step process is key. The slow cooking, that's what guarantees a tender steak, one that melts in your mouth, and the sear, well, that's what gives it that beautiful crispy crust that we all know and love. It's the best of both worlds. Now preheat your oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Precision is key here. That's 120 degrees Celsius for you fancy pants out there. We want to get this just right. While the oven's heating up, take a moment to gather your thoughts and your tools. Grab a baking rack and place it over a sheet pan. This setup is crucial for even cooking. This is important. We want the heat to circulate around the steak evenly. No hot spots here. Now, gently lay that dry brine steak on the rack. Handle it with care. It's time for it to take a little sauna bath. This is where the magic begins. Pop it in the oven and let it slow cook for about 20 to 30 minutes, allowing the flavors to develop. Depending on the thickness of your steak, thicker steaks need a bit more time. Now I know you're tempted to just shove it in and hope for the best, but patience is key. But you need to check the internal temperature. This ensures perfection. We're aiming for around 120 degrees Fahrenheit, the sweet spot for medium rare. That's 49 degrees Celsius for a perfect medium rare. Precision is everything. If you like your steak more well done, you can adjust accordingly, then cook it a little longer, but be careful. But don't you dare overcook it. Overcooking is the enemy of a good steak. While that steak is having its spa day in the oven, let's prepare for the final sear. Let's get the skillet nice and hot. Cast iron is best, but any heavy-bottomed skillet will do. The key is to get it really hot. Crank up the heat to high and add a little bit of oil, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. We want it shimmering. We want it screaming hot, ready to sear. This is where the magic happens. Now once that steak has reached the perfect internal temperature, take it out of the oven and transfer it straight to that hot skillet. Be quick but careful. Don't be scared of the sizzle. That's the sound of flavor happening. Embrace it. That's the sound of flavor happening. It's music to a chef's ears. Sear each side for about 1 to 2 minutes until you get a beautiful caramelized crust. This is what we're aiming for. You want it nice and brown but not burnt. There's a fine line here. This is what's going to lock in all those delicious juices. The perfect end to our journey. And there you have it. A cheap, tough chuck steak transformed into a juicy, tender masterpiece, just as good as any ribeye, if not better. The flavor is incredible, the texture is melt in your mouth, and the best part is, you didn't have to remortgage your house to afford it. Let's recap those 3 simple steps, shall we? First, we tenderize that meat with the jacquard, like a culinary ninja. Then, we hit it with the dry brine, amplifying the flavor and locking in the moisture, and finally we finished it off with a reverse sear that would make any steakhouse chef proud. Remember, these techniques, they're not just for chuck steak, they work for any tough cut of meat. Beef, pork, chicken, you name it, you can transform it from tough to tender with these 3 simple steps. You'll never be disappointed by a tough cut again. Thanks for cooking along, and for God's sake, enjoy that steak. If you enjoyed this recipe, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any more of my kitchen tips and tricks. And if you're feeling really adventurous, try adding a garlic butter sauce after searing. Just melt some butter with garlic, thyme, a splash of lemon juice, pour it over that steak, and thank me later. Catch you next time.